Hey, friends, welcome to the Living Truth podcast. This is Michael Carey here today, and I have our guest, Dr. Eddie Capparucci, back on. Eddie is the author of multiple different books and an incredible counselor and PhD. And the book that we're going to talk about today, Eddie has been on the podcast before, but there's so many different pieces and moving parts of this awesome book going deeper that he's written, and so we're going to talk about the last chapter and go through some of the steps here that's really revolutionized my life and so many other men and how they approach recovery and the work that they're doing. So welcome back, Eddie.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. I always enjoy our time here together, and I'm looking forward to diving into the chapter 16 of the book. It's like you said, it's the thing that makes everything those wheels turn. And you're right. This book right now is I never realized it when I first sat down to write it, but it's being used globally in both not just one-on-one counseling, but in a lot of group therapy. So I'm just pleased with all the feedback and emails I receive on a regular basis of people telling me how much it's changed their lives, and that's God at work, and I'm just so grateful to be part of all of it.
Hmm. That's awesome. And yeah, when you mentioned that, I was just thinking, is there like a training program for counselors to get
There is.
certified in the inner child model, I think, as well?
Yes, there is. We did it with Be Broken Ministries, partnering with them to do that. We probably have about 75 or 80 clinicians right now who are trained with the model, but every day there are more and more that are signing up for it. So yes, there is one, and I could provide you the link with that if you want to put it in your show notes later.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. Um, yeah, let me write that down here so I don't forget, because I probably will if I don't. So, yeah, so there's a revised and expanded edition that you have out now, and I know that there might be a lot of people that have the previous edition. I certainly recommend getting the expanded edition, but this chapter is the last chapter, I believe, in both of the books. In the previous copy, it might be chapter 13, 14, something like
Yeah,
that, and then the
yes, yes.
expanded one is 16. Chapter
Well, we
16.
had the three new kids, so three chapters.
Okay, so yeah, it's chapter 13 in
Right.
the older model, the older copy too. That so I did buy both of them. I bought the expanded as well, and it is definitely worthwhile to look at the additional three kids that you put in there. So the inner child model is fantastic, and going through all of the different chapters, you do get to understand your core emotional triggers. What is it that's being triggered when you feel overwhelmed, when you move into fight or flight? Um, can you expand on that a little bit and just talk about before we dive in that? So this first step is know your emotional triggers. What do you mean by that and the
Yeah.
core
What I
emotional trigger?
what I mean by the core emotional triggers is these are, again, let's take one step back, and again, the framework for the inner child model. What is that? And it's the belief that recovery goes through your childhood. So the core emotional triggers come through past pain points that you dealt with, whether it be through trauma or neglect or a combination of both of those. So, for example, the idea that I don't measure up, or perhaps I don't fit in, I don't belong, I'm not good enough. Those are some core emotional triggers that we go through. And basically, you know what they are, really, Michael? They're the lies we tell ourselves about who we are and how we are. And they were installed there by people and or events in our lives, whether directly or even indirectly. Because, that's one of the biggest issues when it comes to trauma, that, if you have to go through it alone, you're going to come up with a lot of erroneous assumptions about what is happening. And many of them you're going to draw them back to yourself and blame with self-blame for what goes on. So therefore, again, those core emotional triggers are very important. In fact, they're even more important than identifying which inner children you associate with. Because this is where we're going to start to begin the process of helping you to calm those all that noise in your head, calm it down. Because see, that's what's going to drive you to act out. It's this noise, the negative narrative that you have running through your head that you want to escape. I don't want to deal with it. And sometimes you can't even identify what they really are. Sometimes it just feels there's this emotional discomfort or there's this even physical discomfort. Things just aren't right. And I'm tired of it. And therefore I use my coping strategy of let me just escape and go dissociate for a while in acting out so I don't have to feel any of this. But then that only lasts for a certain time, and then we come back to reality. And here we are faced with these again. So, yes, this is the first step. We need to know what are those core emotional triggers. Most people, after the process is done, has anywhere between 4 and 6.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. The explanation. I When I think about the inner child model and the idea of the children, um, at first, I think some guys in the beginning might feel a little offended or something like that, but whatever that looks like. But the reality is this: um, something occurs in my life, and I feel this 5-year-old inside of me coming up and taking control over everything. The biggest thing is I want to pout. I want to take revenge. I want to do things that an adult would not normally do. that that's pretty good. I think uh, way of describing it and understanding. I know in that moment though, when I'm triggered, it feels like everything I'm believing is true. It feels like everything that if I'm angry with my wife or whatever it is, and all the lies that I believe that you just talked about myself, and then it turns around and lies about her, whatever it is. It's like everything feels true, and I'm really in a fight or flight type of a situation, right?
Right. See, that's because we conditioned ourselves that way, right? Here it is. We're younger. We're going through a lot of the normal pains of childhood, adolescence, teen years. We're going through some of those that aren't normal, that we shouldn't go through. And because we have to deal with them on our own, again, we come up with our own assumptions. And that's what we've learned to do. So even now, as adults, right, we're just running on raw emotions most of the time when something goes wrong. And therefore, we're not putting any clarity to it. And you're right, we believe it to be real. We believe that. And
Hmm.
so, therefore, again, you have to remember that those folks who deal with addictive behaviors, we can't sit with emotional distress. Okay. So,
Hmm.
what am I going to do with this? I have to find a way to distract myself so that I can breathe a sense of relief, even just for a short time.
Yeah. And that's when people look at porn, masturbate, do act out in all the different ways the addictive behavior comes in, which is also an immature way of coping with
Yeah.
life. It's not actually facing the problem, dealing with it, finding solutions, resolving things. It's
Then
the
again,
opposite.
we're taking an inner child perspective of life, and we're taking an inner child way of managing life issues and problems. And that's why we need to be able to manage the child so that we can go back and take an adult stance to things.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, and being in that situation when I've been triggered and that I feel that's one of the bigger things. It's easy to recognize that the inner child is taking over, is the pouting, yeah, whatever it is, and that expresses itself in so many ways. But
Right,
pouting,
right. Pouting, tantrums, okay,
yeah,
tantrums,
hmm,
you named some of the behaviors before, withdrawing, becoming more
hmm,
aggressive, passive aggressive. I mean, there's many different coping strategies that the child has.
yeah. And I know one thing's for sure is if my wife came and said, I think your inner child is taking over right now, um, that would make me really mad in that moment. It's like, no, it's not. And it wants to just fight back.
There you go,
Um,
becoming defensive. That's what you just did. You became defensive. But now, you know what? I mean, you understand everything about this inner child model and such. I mean, if your wife came to you right now and said, "Hey, Michael, I think your inner child is acting up," what would be your response?
um, well, right now I'm talking to you, but yeah, you're talking about it in another scenario. Um, well, yeah, I probably just need to dial back to yesterday and go through some inventory there. Um, it really does depend on a lot of things, and this is I'm looking at really a page from the last chapter of the book, Going Deeper, and I think the answer to your question is on the right column here, which is watch out for being drained mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. My reaction to her is going to be how drained I am. Yeah. If I'm drained in all those areas, well, my reaction is going to be just what I said, it's not the child that I'm going to be barking back at her. And I'm going to act like a 5-year-old in that moment. With all the work that I've done, I've been working on myself since 2009 and thousands of dollars in therapy and workshops, flying to workshops, intensives. So, yeah, that is so critical. Being drained mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. If I am doing well in those areas, taking care of myself, then my response is going to be a lot different. It'll be now it might not still be perfect, it might just be way less defensive.
Correct, correct. And that's why I look at that, the idea of making sure that we are replenished in those four areas. Really, to me, that's recovery. Okay. That I am very alert. What is my mind, my body, and my soul telling me? Am I good? Am I not good? Am I off? Am I starting to tail off? I went out with my wife yesterday and as we were heading out, I said to her, I go, honey, I just want to let you know because I knew we'd be gone for 3 or 4 hours running errands. I said, I got to tell you, I'm not in a really great place right now. I'm aware of it, which is good. So therefore I'll stay there. But if I kind of withdraw or kind of shut down a little bit, at least you know what that's about. So that I'm prepared. Wait, she's not like, what's into you? What's happened to you today? Why are you being like this?
Yeah.
Now, what I've done, I've noticed it myself, and I'm proactively communicating that to her.
She's had enough experience around the real true you, the adult you, your core self, that she knows when something's off, right?
Oh yes, oh yes,
Hmm.
no doubt about it. And you know the funny thing about it was after I told her that, the rest of the afternoon I was fine. I did not. I was really afraid I was going to really kind of start to withdraw, and I did not. And so again, I think there's something about the being real and being open and vulnerable. That's what that was, vulnerable. Because I could have said that and she could have said, no, no, you're not doing that to me today, man. That's not happening. All right, we're going out here. We have stuff to do. You're going to make sure you're, and that's not what I got. So,
Yeah. Being vulnerable is
yeah,
so key to relationship with your wife, especially, and mine. So, yes, the core emotional triggers, I think, reading through the chapters with all of the children, and are there, how many are there? 11, right? Is
you're
that
12, 12
12?
children. Mm-hmm.
12 chapters. And at the end of each chapter, somewhere in there, so read the chapter, and then towards the end, there are a list of different core emotional triggers. So it really is important to read through all the chapters. And I got to tell you, narrowing it down to four, like you said, was a little difficult. I know so many guys, and myself included. I read through the 12, and I'm like, I think there's two that I don't have. It's like it's easier to say the ones that I don't relate to than the ones that I do. It's like, it's just less complicated, but it really is that so many of them, um, you identify with four. You can narrow it down to the ones that are the most prevalent, the most reactive, the bigger reaction that you have with some of the things. So it is critical. But then at the end at the last chapter here, the steps to successfully manage these emotional triggers is where we land, and this is so critical in dealing with how I'm feeling, and those, like you mentioned, the lies that we believe about ourselves. It turns around, and the defensiveness wants to cast those lies and blame on someone else. That's what a child would do: turn it around, blame somebody else. Um, so the lies that we believe about the situation that we're in, about ourselves, about other people, listing those out, and then going through and understanding what's the reality. So there's in the book here, there's 6 steps, and we definitely don't want to take away from the book, but drive you to the book to understand and work through this and have this as a tool so that you can really incorporate this in your everyday life. Um, so the first one, know your emotional triggers, understanding what those are and memorize them is in the book. If you memorize them, then you're just more apt to understand what it is, narrow it down, and kind of name the thing that you're feeling, right? And some of the lies that I remember, um, no one likes me, I'm not good enough, I don't know what I'm talking about. Some of those lies, but and so those are, yeah, like the trigger. The trigger is that I don't matter. So many of them kind of filter into that one for me, and that's where I landed. So the trigger, so something has happened, the event is there. Uh, the second is recognize the negative event. These are the events that activate the inner child. Can you go through that? That's the second step. Recognize negative events.
Right. Now, you'd think that would be, pretty self-explanatory. All right, a negative event happened. But see, the thing is, we, again, because we don't like to recognize negative events, we don't like to recognize anything that's going to bring distress into our world, we ignore a lot of things that probably we should at least not maybe let bother us, but at least we should acknowledge. So what happens is, okay, something happens at the gate in the morning, and you're somewhat elevated, okay. And again, we're talking about anxiety. Then something else happens, something else happens, something else happens, and they start to build upon each other. And then you finally get to, it's like, you know what, just push through, just push through, just push through. And eventually you're going to hit a wall. And when you hit a wall, you're going off the side. And that's what's happening. So that's why if I spelled it out individually to say, hey, you know what, a negative event, look at it, just examine it. Does it match up with any of the core emotional triggers? If it doesn't, okay, my kid's not activated, probably let it go. But if it does match with one of these, I can't ignore it. I can't brush it aside. I can't minimize it, which is what we do many times. It's not that big a deal. Let it go, right? I need to know I have to because the kid is rumbling under the surface. All right, he's rumbling now. He's upset by something. And again, if something else were to go wrong, then it could wind up leading to a situation where you might get caught off guard and then you're off doing something and you're wondering, what the heck? Why am I here? And how did I get here?
Yeah, exactly. So so it sounds like there's two different approaches to it. It could be something major that has happened, like a big argument or a blow up with your spouse, whatever. Something happened at work, getting fired, whatever. So there are big events, but we don't always understand how those little things add up,
No,
and they do add up. So that's so important. Recognize the negative events that happen to us every day, in addition to the bigger ones. Yeah.
right. But then again, like the little ones, okay? Oh, I got to go give a presentation and oh, I got a fever blister. Like, all right, okay, you got a fever blister. What the, no, but if I worry about what people think about me, if I'm worried about the fact they're gonna, let's say people made fun of me a lot when I was younger, I'm gonna worry that that's something that's there that's gonna be distracting to them. So again, for many people, it's nothing, let it go. But if it matches one of your core emotional triggers, again, you just need to be cautious.
Yeah. So any event that you're going to place yourself into like that, where you might feel the worry,
Right.
the risk, taking a risk is what it might feel like, and worrying that what happened to me in my childhood is going to happen again. So even perceived emotional triggers, negative events, perceived, it hasn't even happened yet. Fear of that negative event happening could trigger.
Well, do we not do a lot of that too? Right? We're in our own heads a great deal. All right. We have the conversations, the dialogue before we even sit down to have them, or even we may not even, maybe we're never going to have them. We try to play out what is going to happen with an event. Okay. We don't just let things occur. Right? And the reason being is because we are worried and we're scared about something going wrong. So therefore, we cause ourselves all this additional anxiety by ruminating over things that may never happen.